Course and Stars podcast. Toby on the mic. Quotes watch. Stars watch.
Hi, welcome to the Quotes and Stars podcast. My name's Toby Lanyon. This is episode 3 of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get straight into it.
Stars watch.
One of the crucial elements of design or creativity that I've seen over the past years/months is set design. And set design is really one of those things that if you watch any movies, if you see an editorial photo shoot, a cinematic, content, film, anything from the visual media perspective, set design has played a role. And with that industry, you have set designers that play their part in creating the scenes. And the fascinating thing about set design is that there's so many unique set designs that almost get lost in the image or in the shoot or in the cinematics. But even set design in itself is an art in itself or profession, trying to create scenes out of nothing. Set design in the industry is one of those industries that's so you can almost miss it if you're not in tune, or if you're not in tune to who does a lot of these set designs. And, you know, just to name a couple of set designers in the field right now. So you've got Leyden Osborne, you've got Jabez Barnett, you've got Leslie Zhang, you've got D_set stylist, and you've got Ibi No Joya. Just to name a few, and they're doing absolutely amazing set designs. And I think set design is one of those professions that you can almost see the creativity in all mediums, from cinematography to film to fashion to photo shoots to editorials. And it's an art in itself to create a scene out of nothing in, you know, studios or odd locations is a real art. So it's definitely worth checking out. And one of the set designers that I saw that was absolutely amazing in the field was a guy called Jabez Barnett. Saw his set design for Stutzy and Levi's. It was absolutely incredible. The concept of it is just so simple, but how it's brought about in cinematography when you're watching it on screen is very unique. So if you take almost this kitchen scene and you've got a female model, you know, just walking around in the kitchen doing the usual things, and you've got her standing against the sink, but there's a window, and in that window it feels like time is moving forward because like the sun is moving or the background's moving. And then you get her sitting down and the table moves, or it sort of moves, it sort of the camera sort of pans in a way that it transports her from the kitchen to the pavement. And just have a look at that. I'll probably drop the link in, but just have a look at that scene, and then just I wouldn't say the simplicity of it, but then the behind the scenes, and you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, kind of makes sense. That's how you do it. But that's the creativity of it, is like trying to create a scene out of nothing and really giving it that sort of wow factor on the screen. And I think, like I said, set design is one of those industries that's just absolutely essential to create the scene that you want to create for film or photography or cinematography. I think this quote just sums it up, really. It says, for an artist, there's nothing better than having the opportunity to create a world that doesn't but could exist. Christopher Ladrat. One of the tools we have to talk about is Blender. Blender is an absolutely insane 3D creation tool. It's one of the most accessible. It's open source. It's accessible. Anybody can jump in and use Blender. It's great for designers. It's great for filmmakers. It's great for graphic designers. If you can learn the tool, you can do amazing stuff with it. And I dabbled in it a couple of times. I think it'll probably take me a little bit longer to get to grips with, but just to showcase the power of what Blender can do, check out a artist called Dynamo Dream. He basically created a cinematic cyberpunk scene from just basically using a green screen, couple of lights and a model. And there's almost a comparison video of the green screen footage and what he created in Blender. And it's just it will absolutely blow your mind. It'll be like, this is from one app, which is free, and you can create this sort of level of cinematography from it. So it's definitely one to check out. And another artist, which I've recently discovered as well, is Carlos .mov, at Carlos.mov. He created this, almost this sort of skateboard cinematography. It kind of feels like the video game Skate in terms of like the actions and emotions, and he showcases the behind the scenes of that as well, and how he brought that to life through Blender, through 3D. And it's an amazing showcase of what Blender can do. So if you can utilize that program, definitely jump on Blender. And there was one quote I saw about Blender, and it said, Blender is one of the most powerful creative applications on the web, and arguably the most powerful open source application currently available. It is a jack of all trades software that allows you to do almost anything to a professional grade standard. And that was Bailey Design. Something personal from me, I think, but something that I've seen being talked about. It was talked about a lot at Off Festival as well, was the pandemic and how that had such a massive effect. And it's strange talking about it now because that wasn't that long ago, or in lockdown, work stopped for some of us, or for most of us. Businesses lost out, especially on the creative side. You know, clients, agencies couldn't get any work, contracts got cut out, and basically it felt like a reset for a lot of people. And a lot of the speakers at Off Festival, they basically talked about their pandemic experience where they basically lost everything. You know, they lost the clients, they lost the work, and they had to kind of reset and reevaluate what they were doing and the future. And it sort of got me thinking about when the pandemic really hit for me and what I did during those times. I was quite fortunate because I was working in a situation where I could potentially work from home. It wasn't always like that for everybody else, but during that time, I really just started creating just to create and just to not even pick up my skills again, but just to enjoy the craft. And, you know, I started to dabble in to things like After Effects, which I used to use a fair bit for projects back in uni, but I sort of lost touch with it, didn't really pick it up. But I just started to just do just some creative things in After Effects and almost merged that with my graphic design skills. And because lockdown was a time where things really stopped and time almost went on pause, and you were able to really ask yourself questions, look at where you were heading, and really just, you know, figure out stuff yourself. And I think for a lot of creatives currently now, that time was a time where they could really sort of redirect or reevaluate what they were doing and find their path to where they wanted to head. And I think, like I said, it was just a very common theme throughout the Off talks. And as scary as a time was, I'm going to say that it was probably, for me, it was a beneficial time, because I remember being in a very mentally not so great place before the pandemic. I was doing a lot of work. I won't go into the details of that, but I just wasn't in a good mental place. And I think because things just went quiet and they shut down and all the noise stopped, it was like, okay, you know, Tubi, who are you? What sort of creative are you? What do you enjoy doing? And I was able to answer those questions during lockdown. So yeah, it was just something that I wanted to mention and something that I got reminded of. Another thing that I've noticed, and because I've worked in the space for 7 years. I've been in that space, and that's the space of football. Basically, so another aspect of, I wouldn't say creativity, but in terms of space, in terms of entertainment and medium, is the space of football. And I've worked in that space for 7 years. I've worked for various clubs, but I won't go so much into my sort of experiences. But one thing that I've always said when working in the space is that football is in a need now of creatives to really disrupt the space, to really push what football is and what football can be. Because a lot of traditionalists say, you know, football's just a game, it's just a sport. You know, that's it. People go to matches or people watch it on TV and that's it. And obviously there's other things around it. But football is still seen in that traditionalist aspect, depending on where you watch it, especially in the Premier League or European Cup. There's that sort of traditional elements of it. There's not really been many things that have kind of broke away from that sort of identity, seen as like football in terms of being a disruptive space in terms of sport. And one thing that the MLS or football, you can call it, the Americans call it soccer or football on the stateside have done, is they've hired a creative advisor for the MLS. Now, when I saw this news, I was just in shock because for the MLS to do this first, and I'm going to get to why I'm saying they're doing this first, is it just shows you that when you're in a place where you're up against, you know, compare or somebody that's in a bigger space that has the viewership, has the revenue, you are going to find ways to be a disruptor or disrupt the space or put yourself in a different place to your competitors, which is the bigger leagues. And the fact that the MLS has done this is just absolutely amazing because, like I said, I've been saying this, football and soccer is in need of disruptive creatives to disrupt the space and bring in something new. The MLS have hired a guy called Guillermo Andrade. I'm sorry if I've butchered that name, but basically he's come from a fashion background and he came from a street label which he owns called 424. And for somebody like him who's in the fashion world, in the fashion space, to be employed by a soccer league or football league to be a creative advisor is big news. This is culturally game-changing stuff because, like I said, football is very much seen still in the traditional aspect, and there's still, for me personally, and maybe it's a debate, there's still a lot of things that football is not diving into to disrupt the space. And I think this hire, in terms of getting Guillermo on board to the MLS, is going to absolutely do wonders in terms of the next couple of years. And I think the MLS and the way football is going in America, because the growth of football, the viewership, the kids that are partaking on it compared to the other big US sports, I think the other leagues need to be very, very careful and not get complacent because the way things are going and with this hire, the MLS has been very forward thinking, so this is no surprise. Soccer players are uber stylish with the freshest haircuts and shoes. The problem is it hasn't been used as a part of the brand, and it should also capture the same edgy aesthetic characteristics of soccer players. I think a GQ spread with MLS players and more high-end fashion sponsorships are in the cards. The MLS is now on the international stage with players being acquired by European clubs. So creative advisor role is part of the natural progression. At Patrice is worthy on Instagram. And I think that just sums up literally what this is going to mean for the MLS and for football moving forward. And I literally posted a comment on Guillermo's post. And I said basically to him, I said that, look, I've been saying it for time. Football's in need of creatives who can disrupt the space. Football has been crying out for this, so super excited to see that this is happening. Congrats, go and make your mark. We'll be rooting for you. And that was a quote that I'll send. So yeah, super exciting times for the MLS, for the NWSL as well. I know, I'll say a friend or somebody close that's just joined as a creative director as well for them. So big moves in terms of football and soccer in the US. So definitely keep an eye on that and stay tuned and watch out for more.
Quotes watch.
So on Quotes Watch today, I did see quite a few quotes. There was actually quite a lot of quotes I saw this week that I could have included, but one of them was from the creative director of Ambush called Yoon An. I hope I pronounced that right. And have a look at her work, her creative direction and what she's doing with Ambush. It's just absolutely insane. It's really, really creative work. You can kind of see it. It's got that sort of Y2K vibes, character select vibes. So yeah, definitely check her out. But basically one thing she said in one of her posts was, contribute more than you consume. Always talk to people from different walks of life, different industries, professions, and skills. Talking to people from different industries or just different walks of life. And I think as creators, we tend to almost stay, I wouldn't even say stay in our professions, but don't really venture out and don't really sort of talk to other people in professions that quote unquote might not be seen to be a part of the creative profession. But being a creative is about exploration, is about collaboration, is about seeing different points of view. And the more you talk to people from different avenues, different walks of life, the more well-rounded you are going to be as a creative, the more people you can reach out to, the more professions you can reach out to, the more skills you acquire, the more skills you have at your fingertips, because you can gather a sound designer, you can gather a guitarist, you can gather a fine artist, you can gather a sculpturist, you can gather somebody who does styling, you can gather somebody who does theatre designs, you can gather somebody who works on films, or you can gather somebody who plays games and get their input, or you can gather somebody who's in the sport. It's just all walks of life. And I think her quote makes a whole lot of sense to that. And you can see it in her work as well. And another quote that I saw, which sort of goes into just how integral our industry is and what we do, and just even from my point of view, even just from a design point of view, I saw this at the Design Museum when I went there a couple of years ago. And the quote is, "Design is everywhere. It's the alarm that woke you up, the news app on your phone, the tea bags used for your morning brew, the card you tapped on the bus, the glasses perched on your nose, the words you're reading right now. So embedded in our lives, we almost forget it's there. Design, humanity's best friend. Design Museum." I think that's such a sound quote, because if you think about it, without design, like, we would literally not be able to do very much. You know, you can just ponder on that thought. What things do you use on a daily basis that hasn't had an imprint of somebody that's had to go and design it to the basic form? Your mobile phone, your paper you read, your books you read, the water you drink, you know, the food you go out and shop for, the clothes you buy, everything has an element of design. And it's such an important factor in the industry, and it's not something that should be neglected or should be ignored. So yeah, thanks for tuning into the podcast. I wanted to freestyle this a bit. I didn't have a lot of time because there's so many things that I've got going on the side, but I think it's important to get this content out now. I think we're in a season where it's about getting the content out there. It's about getting my thoughts out in the open. And like I said, the main goal for this is to get people inspired and for people to come to this podcast and say that, okay, look, I know I'm going to hear something that is going to be somebody that I follow, or something that I'm going to save for a project, or I'm going to utilize for one of my brand campaigns or cinematics. Because I think in our industry, there's a lot of gatekeeping from what I see. There's a lot of, I don't think people do it deliberately, but I think it's because it's not like a blender, it's not like an open source that you can just gather this information or know who you need to follow or who you need to talk to get these opportunities. So sometimes you either get there by luck or you get there because somebody knows you, but not everybody can be in that position. And I think for me, just thinking about what would I want from my younger self or from my past self, and I think information like this, or just somebody coming at it and say, look, have you checked this out, it can mean a lot. It can mean the difference between you having that brilliant idea spark from this, or you might missing that opportunity that you could have got, but you just didn't know who to see or who to follow on Instagram or who to read up on. So that being said, I think what I want to try and do is try to basically add the link to the breakdown decks that I create on this podcast, so that even if you don't want to listen to the podcast, you go on the Spotify link, you view the description, you just want to get the references, that's okay with me. Like I said, I think there was a quote from Gandhi. He said, be the change that you want to be. And for me, the change that I want to see is things opening up, everybody getting the opportunities, things not being tied down to the few, and being able to really fulfill everybody's potential. And that comes from ideas, it comes from inspiration, it comes from seeing things that you haven't seen before that will spark something. Like, there's been so many times I've saved something on an Instagram that I've seen or followed someone and they've posted something up, and that's literally sparked an idea that I've had, like, I've presented a year later or 2 years later. That is the difference. And like I said, we need to stop the gatekeeping. We need to open it up, because there's so many people that can not even just do what I'm doing. What I'm doing is a small pin drop in the ocean, but there's so many things in the creative space that still need to be done, and the football thing that I was talking about is a great example. I've been in the industry for I don't know how many years, but there's still so much that can be done. And I think creativity is going to be a vital part in what we do in the next couple of years. So, look, just to start plugging it about, thanks for tuning in. Please keep listening. Give me any feedback if you want to give me. Like I said, I'm going to start the Quotes and Style portrait series very, very soon. So that's a part of this as well. So I'll definitely be reaching out to people to see if they want to collaborate and get involved. There's other things on the horizon as well, but that's the next big project that's going to be happening. And if you're around, if you're in London, definitely reach out to me, because, this is going to be a big thing. And I definitely see this as taking it to a higher level than what it was before. Because like I said, when I started this, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew that if I just got all the tools I needed, reached out to people, delivered a vision, people would want to get involved, and that's what happened. But I think now I'm getting the know-how, I'm getting the knowledge. Now we can take it to the next level. And I think with Quotes and Styles, this is not being done before. Nobody is doing this. So if you're following this now, if you're following this podcast, if you're following myself, if you believe in the vision where this is going, you are one of the few that's going to see this grow. And like I said, without a shadow of a doubt, this is going to grow. This will grow to new lengths. So definitely, like I said, keep on following. I'm going to keep on putting content out, or try to. It's a busy period, but yeah, I'll keep on putting content out. But look, appreciate the listen. Keep on listening to the podcast. Reach out to me if you want me to do anything new. I do want to bring guests at some point. I want to get used to podcasting, get used to the grip of it, get used to formulating a template, and then we'll get people on the podcast. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Have a blessed week, and see you on episode 4.
The Courts and Starts podcast. Toby on the mic. Courts Watch.